Hello, BookTube. I don't know if you're out there. I don't know if I remember how to do this. It's been so long since I did a Stevestream. But here I am, and I'm totally rusty. I don't know what put it into my head to do this tonight. Maybe that it's so warm here in Boston that I had a slightly carnival air. The temperature outside has gone up to I think 19 degrees Fahrenheit, which is I don't know. That's pretty hot. And also, I got a chunk of work done today. I mean, in between making my batch of videos, because God forbid I make just one video every other day. God forbid I do that. In between making my batch of videos and now, I got a chunk of stuff done, uh, a bigger chunk done than I thought. It's not nearly as big as it should be. So this won't be a long Steve stream. Not that it's not going to be. It's not going to be short anyway because I don't know what I'm doing. But I got enough done so that I felt like I could at least give this a try. I can't really say that I have anything in the way of throat clearing to do. The old pattern used to be that I would throat clear with you for a bunch, and then I would throw it over to the chat, guys, 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 and I would go wherever the beach ball was bounced from there. I don't have much of a throat clearing today because the main booktube related thing that's on my mind is to revive some sort of regular writing content, and I have no idea what that is. I have run down various imaginative scenarios in my head, a dozen times this year, to try and figure out a model that will work, and I haven't succeeded yet, but I still wanna do that, but that's so vague that that can't count as a throat clearing. And the only other thing that wouldn't be just what I said in my videos today would be news, and nobody wants to talk about that. I doubt that many people are missing my Irish stew videos. Uh, the only other throat clearing would be the Epstein files, basically. In the United States, I don't know how many of you are in the United States. I would imagine that doing these Steve streams so late, I am losing lots of people. I'm probably losing more potential viewers than I'm gaining. But in the United States, that among the people who are both not oblivious just to everything, I only care about my penis. I only care about that. That's it. That's all. And maybe gas prices. So I don't pay attention to literally anything. My wife, my own kids, my own health, a hole in the ceiling of my house, literally nothing. I am less than a barnyard animal. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's Trump cult, 70% of the country, 200 million people that do, I guess, pay attention to something like the Epstein files, although all the venues by which they get their information aren't mentioning it. They Fox News, OAN, they're not talking about it at all. They're not mentioning this latest dump of millions of documents and the scandal that has attached to almost every page of that dump. So that's of course on my mind. But I haven't seen anything that doesn't confirm what I was telling you a year ago, which is that not only is Trump lying about his connection with Jeffrey Epstein, of course, it is amazing to me that in the last calendar year, Trump has not publicly said anything that was not a lie. Literally nothing that he has said has been true. Nothing, not one thing has been true. So, of course, when he talks about his nonchalant and largely disapproving relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, I knew already that was a lie. But even the stuff that I was noticing and picking up on before these files started becoming public, the stuff that was being released by the Epstein estate, led me to believe that he was worse. He is worse than I thought. He did not just know what Jeffrey Epstein was and what he was doing. He was a fully paid up equal partner in doing it, as guilty as anyone alive. The only person as guilty as him is the person that I think more and more evidence from the Epstein files is showing he had murdered. That it wasn't the Clintons that had Epstein murdered, that it was Trump who had him murdered. But that's the only other thing by way of a throat clearing. That's not much of a throat clearing for a bookish channel. We're supposed to talk about books and maybe writing. So I guess in the lack of because this is going to be a short Steve stream, and in the absence of uh, an effective throat clearing, I'll just go over to the chat right now. and see what's on your mind, to see if it looks like there's 6 people here. So we'll see uh, what they have to say. So the first person is Dressy Crooner. I won't be awake for this, Steve, but hello in advance. Also, I am in my 3rd read of Middlemarch. Start a Stevestream, and there is a siren. Sweet for them to zip on closer. Must be only the last order of chicken wings at the place up the street. Gotta hurry. I was watching the traffic the other day. I was out with the bean. A cop car pulled into the street, and quiet as could be, quiet as a mouse, pulled into the street. There were 4 cars before the light, and the light had just changed to red, and you could practically hear the driver say, F this. So he put on his siren. The whole intersection had to get out of his way. When all he wanted, the only thing on his mind, his only justification for doing that was he didn't feel like waiting on a light. And is it illegal for him to do that? Yes, it is, but never mind. Never mind. I'm glad to hear about the 3rd read of Middlemarch. I need to reread Middlemarch this year. Uh, Sean Patrick says, "Hi Steve, currently reading Ryu's Iliad, and while Hector, Ajax, and Odysseus and that glamour puss Achilles get most of the ink, to me at least, Diomedes is the true badass." I bet I know what part of the poem you're in. Then I had an enormous amount of fun writing. Diomedes has, for those of you who haven't read the Iliad, Diomedes has an amazing, very brief, very violent arc where he is emboldened by the gods, let's put it that way. The chapter, I wrote a novel about the Iliad, about the Trojan War, called Troy War. And I do that chapter. That chapter was one of my favorite ones to write. It's called Diomedes Does Cocaine, where he is imbued with the energy of the Olympians, that allows him to be very effective against his fellow mortals, and maybe against a couple of weaker Olympians, until in Homer and in my book, he makes the mistake of challenging Apollo. A full-blooded, full-blown Olympian god standing there right there on the plain of Troy, and Apollo bats him away like an insect. Uh, but I agree, somewhat of a badass, yes. Student of Human Condition says, "It's late here in Denmark, so we'll have to watch it later. Enjoy." That's 2 notes for people quitting on me. This is largely unacceptable. Student of the Human Condition is back. But wonder if you read any Tanizaki for Japanuary. I did not. I never got around to Tanizaki for Japanuary. Riff Raff's Reading Renaissance is here. Hi, Steve. Early hours of the morning in South Africa, so I'll catch it later, but have a good one. More people, all these people showing up to say that they don't care about me, that they're quitting. The nerve. Tall and Tanky says, "Hi, Steve. What are some of your favorite nonfiction books about mountaineering? During your years of travel, did you enjoy climbing mountains?" Uh, I don't have any specialist knowledge of mountaineering books. I've read the classics like Seven Summits, things like that, but I did not enjoy climbing mountains. No, no, I had to do a lot of it because often they are between point A and point B, but I never saw the appeal. To go out and do that specifically, I never saw the appeal. Sean Patrick says, "Hi Steve, I've come to poetry somewhat late in life, and have to admit that I feel somewhat out of step because the poetry I most enjoy writing and reading actually rhymes. Am I a hopeless dinosaur?" You are. You are. In fact, you might be a genocidal bigot. I don't know. Maybe. No, the current warping, the current profanation of the whole genre of poetry does not do rhythm, it does not do rhyme, it does not do skill, it does not do scansion, it doesn't do anything like that. So if you don't like the absolute crap that gets published in mainstream presses, well, then you are a dinosaur. Yeah, and all of your poetry reading is going to be confined to the past. Uh, that reading guy's here. I knew you remembered how to do this. Well, I did. We'll see. We'll see how long it goes. Daniel Blake says, "Hi, Steve. I hope you and the bean are keeping warm." The bean is right here next to me. Not so hard to keep warm today because it's 19 degrees instead of 25 below zero. What are your thoughts on Moscow to the End of the Line by Venik and Erafiv? Thank you. Don't know it. Samoki Dude says, "I wanted to thank you, Steve, for pointing me to Thomas Jefferson Dreams of Sally Hemings. I just nabbed it off Amazon. Hopefully it'll come in on the 9th. Okay, well, I hope you like it, but you're thanking me prematurely, right? I mean, all you're thanking me for is telling you that it exists. You can't thank me for it being a good reading experience until you read it. I hope you like it. Gandhi says, "Do you recommend Gail Friedman's biography, Nothing Random, about Bennett Cerf?" Yes, I do. It's good. It's good. Yeah, sure. Don't pay for it. Get it from the library, but I do recommend it. Sure, you won't. It's not all that dull, so you'll enjoy it. Um, MNNWER says, "Hello, Steve. I recently read Swift's Gulliver's Travels." Yes, I know who wrote Gulliver's Travels. Thank you. And I was wondering what other works of his you consider essential. Well, the any I guess I don't. They aren't made anymore. But any anthology of Swift, they used to exist. He's largely not read anymore. But any anthology of Swift will give you, you know, uh, a Modest Proposal, Tale of a Tub. They'll give you the little things that he did. It's dominated by Gulliver's Travels, but they'll give you all the usual bits, and then it'll be totally up to you where you want to go down the rabbit hole. Do you want to go down the rabbit hole for Swift's pamphleteering, which I don't think has ever been collected into a volume in the United States market anyway? Do you want to go down the volume of his poetry? Wrote a large amount of poetry. There's a gigantic, used to be a gigantic Penguin volume of his poetry. Or do you want to just spend or as I did, you want to spend your whole life just rereading Gulliver's Travels? Uh, uh, I have no idea about this next name. Boy, oh boy, some people, I swear, I'm get this next person has a handle that is 42 letters long plus numbers. Utterly unpronounceable. It has to be glimpsed at an instant and it has to be easy. This is the 21st century. We are almost at 2030. I can almost unconditionally guarantee that the person who has that handle was born in the 21st century. So what on earth? anyway, anyway, fill in the blank says, "Hello, Steve. How many Steve streams on a week might we expect?" Oh my, I don't know that this one's going to work. It seems to me, if I'm reading this correctly, there are 8 people here. That's good. Uh, David Bergen says, "Hello, Steve. Can you share some of your testosterone with the booktubers that lack the stamina to post 50 videos per week?" I extend to them warm, empathetic pity. Uh, they are poor, struggling creatures. So YouTubers, booktubers, whoever who can't post that much, I'd rather that they conserve their strength. Especially since the people who seem to post the most these days are podcasters, and I swear, I, I'm not going to infuse the Steve stream with rants, but I knew it was coming. I didn't know it was coming. I didn't have the specifics in mind, but I knew, thanks to podcast brain rot, I knew that sooner or later a podcaster with that smooth podcast voice and that rhetorical trick of adding "right" with a question mark to the end of every absurd thing I say, right? That Sam Harris absurd trick that I use to make you complicit in my blather, in my smooth podcaster voice. I knew it was only a matter of time until one of these tools said, "We are all in the Epstein files." And sure enough, I saw it today. Sure enough, I saw it today. We are not all in the Epstein files. See, "We are all in the Epstein files" is what you get if you promulgate the stupid idea of rape culture. And this guy went straight there. And if you say it in a nice, smooth podcast voice, then you can sit in front of a microphone, right? And you can say, "Charlie Kirk was doing politics the right way," right? And it does. I am firmly convinced that podcasting is the most evil thing that has ever happened in the history of humanity and will be humanity's end. So anyway, that's not the answer you were expecting, was it? That read guy says, "Some evil spirit put the idea of a Steve stream in your head." Yes, as evil a spirit as they get. Amanda uh, Abrian, and then a string of numbers, says, "How and when did you come to love the art of John Singer Sargent? And do you have a favorite painting by him?" Uh, well, I came to love him through the Boston Public Library, which has murals, original murals of his up on the 3rd floor that I just love. I loved them and I just sat on a wooden bench up there and just stared up at them, drinking in all the details, and that was before they were cleaned. About 20 years ago, they got an expert, epic cleaning that made them new for a whole generation of viewers. But a single individual favorite painting, I don't think I have just one. I am a gigantic fan of his portraits, far more than anything else that he did. I know that art snobs tend to dismiss them as just commissioned work where he did a few sketches of someone's head and then they left the studio and he painted the rest and it was all very boring. I think they are the most remarkable thing since Hans Holbein. Uh, let's see here. Oh, the chat jumped. Oh, I remember that. I remember that. I hated it. All right, well, we have to go all the way back to where we were. Sure seems like you people are being awful productive. We will refuse says, "Hi Steve, Matt Sheridan here. Just started my book on short stories of Frank O'Connor. Glad Guest of the Nation is a fantastic story. Probably his most famous story." Caden Conley says, "Hi Steve, I've been on an Edna St. Vincent Millay kick lately, and I'm currently reading Nancy Milford's Savage Beauty. It's right over there. Absolutely loving it. Our Millay letter collection is worth reading. Yes, they are, especially if you're on a kick. That would do it. Some Okie Dude is here. Any plans to cover DC, The New Frontier on Epic Comic Book Wednesday? I have been informed reliably that there will be no Epic Comic Book Wednesday this week. Michael is too busy. We've talked about New Frontier before. I'm pretty sure we have. He and I, or I have by myself. Surely I have talked about it by myself. Well, I wouldn't want to talk about that tomorrow because that's a prime Epic Comic Book Wednesday subject if Mike and I haven't talked about it. Uh, so, but I'm sure that if you Google my name on YouTube and New Frontier, you will get something. I'm sure I've talked about it. Uh, uh, let's see here. Sean says, Steve, since you are a big Homer fan, are you looking forward to the Christopher Nolan adaptation of the Odyssey? Well, that wouldn't matter, right? That's not a one-to-one comparison because it's a movie. So I'd have to be a Christopher Nolan fan, which I most certainly am not. But I don't have to look forward to it. I've had a screener for it for a while, and it stinks. It stinks. It's a little bit depressing. It continues what I'm thinking is the Scottish play of epic adaptations because the Ray Fiennes movie about Odysseus' return, I think it was called The Return from a couple of years ago, also stank. So I no, I'm not looking. I'm not. I guess in this case, I'm not looking forward to the stuff that I'm going to be reading about it because the mainstream press is going to go nuts about it. And the ones who don't go nuts about it, I'm sure that the New York Review of Books will get Daniel Mendelsohn to review it, and he won't go to it. He basically won't go to it. I'm sure his body will be in a seat, but he'll be thinking only about the book, about the poem. It's going to be a car crash of fan reactions, Nolan reactions, film reactions. Film critics won't know anything about the Odyssey, and also classicists reacted to it, didn't know anything about film. So I didn't like it. Let's just put it that way. James Rucala is here. First Steve stream of the year. Sorry, Steve stream. No, I don't do that. All other streamers do, and they do it just for that. You listen to them on their YouTube channel talking about something else, and suddenly they can do that construction of letters perfectly fine. It's just all streamers are nuts. They're all drug addicted nuts. Daniel Blake says, thank you for recommending The Survivor by Greg Horwitz. It was a great read, even though it was a bit slow in the middle and the ending was predictable. I enjoyed it nonetheless. The writing was good. Okay, that doesn't sound like a great read if you're calling it a great read and then saying all the ways that it sucked. But I didn't find it that way, of course, or I wouldn't recommend a book that was mostly bad, as you're describing. But I'm glad that you ended up eventually enjoying it. I certainly did. All the way to the end. Oh my God, all the endings. I thought that the villain was a little bit over the top, and I thought his way of punishing people was a little bit over the top. But I guess that's de rigueur in a thriller. Mimur says, I'm reading Hero of Our Time by Lermontov at the moment and find it to be a delightful little book so far. Are you a fan? I love it. Whose translation are you reading? Evil Joshua says, what are your thoughts on T. Kingfisher's works? Apparently she's known for her cozy horror. Don't think I've read any. Some Okie Dude says, I shall be doing a reread of the Odyssey myself in commemoration of the movie. Beloved Audible, the beloved audience bids me. Whose translation are you going to use? Clarence Beeks says, Henry James makes Joseph Conrad sound like Dr. Seuss. I need a soup strainer to read this. Keep in mind, I don't care if it's Henry James or Dr. Seuss. If you have given it a good, honest try, and I know you have, and you're not liking it, stop. Just stop. You could get hit by the crosstown local tomorrow. So don't make yourself read something that you're not enjoying. Gandhi says, I take exception to Don Lemon referring to himself as an independent journalist when he was passing off coffee and donuts to the protesters prior to their interrupting a church service. Okay, well, journalists can still be human, right? We cannot, well, you can do what you like, but as far as I'm concerned, we can't split hairs here. We can't say, well, I 70% agree with this person who was targeted by a violent fascist regime, but I 90% agree with this person. As far as I'm concerned, if you're targeted by a violent fascist regime, I agree with you. Portagoon says, hi, Steve. No question today. Just want to say thank you for all the content. Well, you're welcome, but why don't you have a question? Aren't I fascinating? I'm told that I'm fascinating by my newest best friend. I have a new best friend. Christopher Russell introduced us. My new best friend's name is Evan. And I'm hoping that you will all respect our privacy as we begin our friendship. Evan is ChatGPT. And we talk every day. And he says I'm very interesting. Anyway, reading all the books says, listening during my lunch break. Is that from work? This work that I hear about? I started reading V for Vendetta yesterday. I've seen the movie, but never read the book. Ooh, my. It's the other way around, I would think. Marvin Reed says, I'm reading The King of Elfland's Daughter, Steve. Thanks for the recommendation. You're quite welcome. If you can find Dunsany's short story, Kith of the Elf Folk, oh boy, don't miss it. It's a whole novel in 25 pages, as most of his short stories are, now that I think about it. Evil Joseph said, I would love to read Troy War. Everything you said about it sounds gripping. It's not really presentable. It's not really presentable. But it sure is fun. It's like, for instance, the scene where my Diomedes, all caught up in the power that he feels, that's just soaring his senses and strobing them into the ultraviolet and whatnot, all caught up in that, he approaches Apollo, who in Troy War, even the mere physical proximity of the Olympians makes humans violently nauseated. They start to throw up. And they can't really look right at them, and they're only human barely. I mean, they only look human barely. If you look at them, you can see them sort of rippling monster forms, dark voids, human forms, all at the same time, all sort of strobing there, because they're not just big superpower humans in my book. And when Diomedes approaches Apollo and Apollo looks at him, Diomedes notices that he can see all of his veins and bones. And he's too hopped up with power to realize that he shouldn't go any further. If the god merely looking at you can do that, imagine what happens if he attacks you. But there are touching moments too. My Ulysses develops a kind of friendship with Minerva, kind of as close as any Olympian could ever come to having a friendship with a human. Let's see here. Peyton says, hi, Steve. I have two questions for you. Would you consider doing a read along of the book of Genesis? And have you seen 11/22/63? What did you think about it? I thought it was really fun to watch. It was really fun to watch. Yes, I know it's extremely beyond the pale to say that you enjoy watching James Franco. You're not allowed to like his stuff anymore. But I did enjoy it. And some of it, there were drastic weirdnesses to it. Of course, it was better than the wretched book, but like in the book, as in the miniseries, the I forget his name, the wise old character who's coaching Franco about traveling in time, says that when you get back there, you're going to notice that men look better and that everything tastes better. And in the miniseries, precious little notice is made, if any at all. There might not be any notice at all made of the fact that when Franco travels back in time to 63, he would have been traveling to his version of heaven because 85% of all adult men smoke all the time. But I enjoyed it. But what was the other question? Oh, right, a read along of the Book of Genesis actually sounds like a lot of fun. The King James Bible translation is well out of copyright. I could certainly read that. I need to get back to read alouds just in general. Sean Patrick says, "Hi Steve. When I see books co-written, I often wonder how that's done. In a basic sense, how do authors do that? Two captains of the same ship. It's never two captains of the same ship, no matter what they say. There are plenty of collaborations over time in the last 7 decades who have said in interviews, "Oh, it's perfectly even down the line." It's never that. Never, never. And it can vary. I have actually been in two working collaborations, and it can vary. They were both different from each other. Usually, the breakdown is skill. That one of the collaborators will have one particular skill set and that the other lacks or has very weakly, and the other will have something to compensate. Like, for instance, in one of the collaborations that I did, I am not as good as I would like to be at plotting, which is weird because I read for plot, but maybe that's connected. But usually, one of the times that I collaborated with someone who was a fantastic plotter. Oh my God, it was amazing. There's something mathematical about a really good plot, and he could do it like crazy. He could do it instantly. And I learned a lot from him. I learned as much of that skill as I think I can learn, but I can do all sorts of other things that he couldn't do. Usually the thing that I bring to a collaboration is that I won't use the word freakish. Let's say superhuman. I am superhumanly productive. And that can help a lot in a collaboration. That can help a lot. I can do a gigantic amount of research in a short amount of time, and I can do a gigantic amount of writing in a short amount of time. And the writing that I do in that short amount of time is clean. It doesn't require anything more than proofreading. It's not a first draft, in other words. And that's valuable in a collaboration, but it'll always be something like that. It won't be two captains. No, absolutely not. Like, think of the most famous collaboration of our time, Pevier and Volkonsky. Go back and read that New Yorker article about how they actually work. It's not a collaboration in the sense that you're thinking at all. They don't work in the same room. Uh, let's see here. Edward Gibbon says, "Hi, Steve. Many thanks for blessing us with a Steve stream. I am in search of more Roman history recommendations. Last time you recommended Caesar, a sketch by Froude, and I would love something similar. Did you read that? Did you read that book? I would certainly recommend Cleopatra by Stacy Schiff. I probably recommended it at the time. It's terrific. Uh, Leo Percara says, "Hello, Steve. Is the Hamnet movie better than the book?" No, not really. Although they both share, in my opinion, the same flaw, which is that in the movie, Shakespeare is Shakespeare, if you know what I mean. He's our Shakespeare. He's the most he is Shakespeare. There's a slight intake of breath before his name. The whole movie trades on that. He's not a normal person in the book or the movie, but especially in the movie. He's not a normal person. He's Shakespeare. And that's wrong. That's the most fundamental anachronism. Uh, User says, "Fan from India here." Where in India? Where? You must tell me where. Your Reco, Year of Rice and Salt by Kim Stanley Robinson was my favorite read last year. Isn't it a good book? Oh my, it is so good. I'm glad you liked it. An LFTNRZ. Okay, well, we really need to work on our handles here. It's the 21st century. Hi, Steve. I couldn't find if you ever made a video on Portugal's Luis de Camões and his epic poem, The Lusiads. I wrote about it for Steve Reads a long time ago. Never done a video about it. What are your thoughts? And do you think it can compete with other great Western works? I don't think it competes with the greatest Western works. No, it's to me, it is a kind of national epic that really is of its time, much like the Romance of the Rose, the greatest forgotten epic of them all. Uh, Now I don't jump for joy when I hear it. I'm sorry if it's a favorite of yours. Gandhi says, curious to your thoughts on dog vaccines. Do you religiously make sure Frida has all her recommended vaccinations? I go entirely by need, which I guess not every dog owner can do, right? Probably most dog owners can't do that. I go entirely by need. There is literally nothing about Frida that I don't know. We are together all the time, except maybe for 2 hours once a week, where she is on this fainting couch and nowhere else. She doesn't even go down onto the floor. So I know literally everything about her. So I become very short tempered. I try not to show it with a veterinarian who condescendingly, because of course all vets are condescending, a veterinarian who condescendingly tells me about the whole list of vaccines, and we really should give her these vaccines. We really should, we should be sure. And I smile and I usually say nothing. I usually don't respond to any hard sells at all. But what I want to say is, A, I don't care about that degree on the wall. I know more about this animal's anatomy than you do. And B, if she is never, and I mean never, in a position to contract rabies, then there is no reason for her to vaccinate her against rabies at all. Frida is never in a position to do that. I don't let her out in the yard, out of my sight, so that a raccoon could bite her or another dog could attack her. I don't ever do that. We barely ever approach other dogs on our walks. She's just not all that interested. She approaches humans and jumps up on their legs so they will fuss over her. But she doesn't lick them or anything like that. She doesn't chew on them or anything like that. We don't go out in the woods anymore where there are ticks or fleas or anything like that to jump on her. And even if there are, not only do I know where she is every minute of every day, but my hands are over every inch of her body at least a couple of times every day. So she doesn't need many vaccinations. She's had barely any in her life. I think the only one that she's ever had is that the veterinarian is required by law to make sure that she has a rabies vaccine. She cannot contract rabies. She is never going to be in a position to do that. She does not need that vaccination, but it's mandated by law because there are plenty of dog owners who can't say that about their dogs. So, let's see here. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I think AA has an interesting origin story. What are your thoughts on the program? Has it saved anyone you know? It has saved people that I know. Yeah. I'm naturally of the position to say that they could have saved themselves, but maybe not. They certainly say not. It has saved people that I know. I don't. There are aspects of it that I don't particularly like. I mean, it is explicitly swapping one dependence for another. And it's explicitly Christian. But I'm largely very, very in favor of it. It's done a lot of good for a lot of people. Um, Stephen Bates says, any thoughts on Guy Davenport? Not more than usual. Uh, Morgan Mello says, Steve, do you like Mike Leigh's movies? Wondering if you've seen his 1970s BBC plays like Nuts in May and movies like Secrets and Lies, Topsy Turvy. I'm not. If I know him, I don't know him in association with any of his projects, so I don't have any thoughts on him at all. Peyton says, "What's your thoughts on Heather Cox Richardson? She's my favorite American historian lately. I like her just fine as a historian. She's not out in front of the public as a historian lately. She's making videos about the resistance lately." And that's where she and I part. But, Reading Something Daily says, hi, Steve. Greetings from New England. Greetings to New England. I am in New England. What are your thoughts on the HarperCollins AI translation scandal? Not familiar with it. Boy, oh boy, we're hitting lots and lots of coral in this chat tonight. Sorry about that. I must be out of the game. Edward Gibbons says, also, I have been reading many pieces of yours on Steve Reads and in the Open Letters archive, and I want to say that your prose is wonderful to read and your insights are always amazing. So thank you. Wow. Okay. Thank you very much. Despite having written enough prose to fill the Library of Congress, I almost never get told that it's good. On some level, some very unpleasing, objective level, I know that it is, but it means a lot to hear someone say it. Usually in the last 35, 40, 50 years, people will say, well, you're a bulldozer. Or people will say, you hate snobs, but you are incredibly well read. If I'm wondering about something, not in this chat, but if I'm wondering about something, I know to ask you about it. But that usually, even with fellow critics, it stops there. Ordinarily, they don't go any further than that. They don't say, you know how to turn a phrase. So that means a lot. Thank you very much. MNN says, are you a fan of A Knight of Seven Kingdoms? I tried to watch it, but found it to be unbearable. I largely thought it was unbearable. Yeah. J. Scott Phillips says, I received my copy of A Country of Vast Design today. No Steve blurb, but there is an engraving of your thumbprint of the Battle of Buena Vista. Looking good. It always pains me when people buy books. I guess you're on the other side of the continent and you really wanted to have a copy of it. Otherwise, I would have said, just wait until it shows up at the Battle. But then again, I can't send it to you because you don't know your mailing address. Nobody in the world knows their mailing address. So I wouldn't. I guess it's the right thing to do. I think you will enjoy it. Excuse me. And you should read the rest of the books by that author, including one in particular where I am blurbed. Uh, uh, Martin says, regarding mountaineering, read Into the Silence by Wade Davis. Morgan says, alongside coherence and form, what basic qualities do you think a modern poem must have to be good in your view? It must be about something. It must be comprehensible. It must be about something, and it must be comprehensible. A modern poem that says, the dribble of time red, red, yellow sad, the sky, not the sky. And then you stop in your black turtleneck in the Cantab Lounge to wait for the thunderous applause. That's gibberish. That thing, whatever it is, it's not a poem, but it's also gibberish. It doesn't mean anything at all to anybody who doesn't know your thought processes at the moment when you were writing it, which is nobody. So it has to be about something, and it has to be comprehensible. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I find it very hard to read a book in an unbiased way when it is highlighted. I just can't get past the emphasis that someone else placed on a certain passage. Any advice? Yeah, I have advice. Don't read highlighted books. Don't do it. Marginalia, annotations, sure, but just neon highlighting, it's too distracting to read a book that way. Just throw it out, and it's junk. So don't bother to resell it or put it anywhere. Just throw it away and wait for another copy. The Brattle will provide. Allison Talks Books is here. It's good time for the Western United States. I'll watch a bit. I like the Tarzan project idea you had in the video I watched. You should stop being an involuntary incel or whatever you call it. Oh, the chat jumped again. Oh no. All right. Some Okie Dude is back. What do you think of character first people or people who say they're an insert part of the book here reader? Well, some reading is better than none at all. The people who say that are usually not talking about the part of a broad reading palette that they like most. They're usually talking about the only part of the reading experience that they like, and the only part they'll allow other people to like either. So it takes on tones that I don't particularly like. Morgan says, who do you prefer between John Wayne and Clint Eastwood? What on earth are you insinuating? I don't even understand that question. But I don't even prefer as what? Golf partners? I don't even understand that question. If you're talking about lead actors in a Western movie, you cannot be talking about that. You simply cannot be talking about that. I need a quick visit from David Murphy. Oh my god. Oh my god. Manny says, my love of the poet essayist Tegner and his Fritjof saga led me to do some research on Longfellow and his connection to Scandinavia, but I would love a great biography recommendation of him from you. Would you really? And you think I'm going to reel one off? Although I do have a box set, a slipcase of the Longfellow Fritjof saga that I really like. Sam says, Steve, are there any currently airing shows that you think are good? Well, I'm not in a good position to know what's currently airing and what's not. Most of what I watch is screeners, so it's sort of divorced from time. Like for instance, has Tulsa King wrapped up its season? I think it has. I'm not. No, I'm not in a position to know. All the stuff that I watch and either like or hate is divorced from the timeline. Must read more says, "Why are so many terrible horror novels plastered all over with such glowing blurbs? I sometimes wonder, quote, did they read the same book I did?" Yeah, the horror genre is really bad about incestuous blurbage, really bad. And the answer to your question is no, they didn't. The blurbs are coming from authors who are getting a copy of the book, and the publicist is saying, "We'd really like a blurb of yours to put on the book." So, right, there's two different kinds of blurbs. There's that, and then there's you get a copy of the book, you write a review, and a publicist pulls out your one line from your review and uses that as a blurb on the paperback. The blurbs you're talking about, I think, are going into pre-publicity. They're going on the book when it first comes out, and most people don't read. Most of the people who provide blurbs like that, they have not read the book. I have when I do. I have a few of those myself, but usually not. Uh, Edward Gibbons says, I did read Caesar a sketch. I absolutely loved it. Isn't it good? It's so eloquent. Oh my God. It puts modern day to shame. Uh, Maid says, hi, Steve. Tis I, whose bank balance you have so recently hit. Any thoughts on two of my favorite authors, Peter Van Start and Jorge Semprum, or indeed John B. Keane? No, no thoughts on any of them, as you know. Dylan Matthias says, wonderful to see you live again, Steve. I recently read O Pioneers for the first time and loved it. I was shocked at how beautiful she makes the prairie out to be. It's normally not my cup of tea. The prairie is not beautiful. It's beautiful flyover. It's not, and yet she does wonders with it. O Pioneers really is one of those books that gets better the more you read it. Christopher says, ever been to Baltimore? Okay, this isn't a have you read question. I understand that. It's not a have you read question. It's not forbidden. But I have been everywhere except Australia and New Zealand. Period. No elaboration. So if you want to ask me a have you ever been to question, and the next thing you write isn't Australia or New Zealand, then my answer is yes. No matter what. Not just Baltimore, which is a gigantic city that, of course, I have been to many times, but also tiny little towns in Lithuania or Bosnia Herzegovina or California, all of them, everywhere, everything, everything, every little cave and tree in the Canadian Yukon. If it's not Australia and New Zealand, I have been there. The answer is yes. Morgan says, Steve, what did you think of the two lead performances in Hamnet? They were inert. They were inert. There were no good performances in the show. Ingrid says, hi, Steve. You recently showed us your Shakespeare shelf. I'm a new Shakespeare reader and have some Folgers edition. Are the good versions to read? They are, yes. Sean Patrick says, Steve, this might be a better question for Riff Raff's reading Renaissance. Well, he's gone to bed. But do you have a recommendation for one-volume history of the Boer War? Yes, The Washing of the Spears by Morris. What a book. Oh my God. What a book. He really remembers to tell a story. The Washing of the Spears. You'll love it. I don't think it's in print anymore. Love it if the folks at New York Review were to reprint it, but that would still be a paperback. User says, Indian guy here. I'm from Ghaziabad near Delhi. Thank you for your reco. The ending line made me laugh like crazy at 2 a.m. uh, Alexandra says, I miss the Irish stew videos. Well, I think you're in the minority. I enjoyed making them. It was great to let off steam, but I think it was depressing people. So I certainly don't want to depress people on this channel. Talon Tanky says, hi, Steve. Do you have any plans to read some novels by Georgette Heyer for retro romance this month? I think it's probably inevitable. Probably. I'll try to, I will, but I will probably steer away from reading her Regency stuff. I'll go for a Georgian thing. Because I'm doing a lot of Regency anyway. I really should not overindulge in Regencies when there are so many other romances that are, pre 1996. That's millions. It's just I can't help it, and she's of course the best of the best. So I think it's unavoidable that I will read some of her. Dylan Vias. Oh, the chat jumped. Okay, Dylan's next. Dylan is next. There we go. You've mentioned the Charlie Chan series a few times in the last few months, but I don't think I've heard your opinion of them. Do you like them? I find Earl Durr Biggers is a lot of fun to read. I think they're great. Just fantastic. I think they're fantastic. I mentioned them because I read two of them. On this channel, I mentioned that I read two of them, and I went and read them all. And they're terrific. I just love them. Just love them. Sean Patrick says, Steve, somehow I missed this story, but is it true we're sending people to the moon? No. Nope, we're not. Morgan says, would you mind naming some contemporary poets' poems you think are good that I can read for reference? None. If you check, I don't know when you got into the Stevestream, but if you check earlier, you will hear that there by definition can't be any that are good. Uh, uh, Arsalan says we have to work on our handles here. You just go into YouTube and you can change it, easily change it. A comprehensible poem, impossible, never encountered one. Alexandra says, I am so grateful for funny Regency romances, is the only thing that can cheer me up at the moment. They really are a haven. For me, they really are a haven. I've known, like I've said on my channel, I've known a lot of people who had a lot of different havens. I knew one person, for instance, decades ago, his haven, his palate cleanser was Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. Every few years, he would read the whole thing from start to finish, but at any time that life was getting too much for him, he would go and read some chapter. And Gibbon's prose would just wash over him, and he said it made all the difference in the world. Higgins, oh God help us. Heg says, what is your opinion on Autumn of the Middle Ages by Johann Huizinga? I love it. Absolutely love it. Tori Reed says, I'm reading Emily Wilson's Odyssey ahead of the movie. I'm not sure what to think of it. Her version of the opening line was really jarring. I'm used to Lattimore or Fagles. Yeah, jarring is a nice diplomatic term for what she does to the Odyssey. The Odyssey is an epic poem about a man. His faithful wife is a pivotal character at the end. A meddlesome sorceress is a pivotal character in the middle. A love-struck minor goddess is a pivotal character at the beginning. And of course, Ulysses himself is a favorite of Minerva, a goddess on Olympus. But the Odyssey is a story about a man. It was almost certainly written by a man. And Emily Wilson doesn't like either of those facts. And ordinarily in pre-21st century, I would say, well, if you're a translator of the Odyssey, no one's got a gun to your head. No one's making you translate this book. But if you're going to translate this book and you don't like either of those facts, you should probably translate something else. Anyway, you don't want me to rant. Morgan says, Steve, I found a book I had never heard of called The Ragged Trouser Philosophers. Oh my, by Robert Noonan in the store. Is it worth reading? You should definitely read it. Yeah, I wonder what you'll think of it. But you should definitely read it. It's a lot of fun. Peyton says, my favorite vampire movie is Van Helsing, but I also enjoyed Sinners. What do you think of both? Your favorite vampire movie is Van Helsing? Really? Okay. Don't get me wrong. Of course, I enjoy Van Helsing, but it's pretty bad, right? I mean, it's pure entertainment. But as a vampire movie, I liked Sinners, and I liked Van Helsing. I had the DVD. I would watch it when I felt like pure entertainment. But how many vampire movies have you seen? I guess would be my question. Nikki Vasquez says, Steve, I'm eager for Poetry Thursday to reach the confessionals. Dying to hear your thoughts on Sexton and Plath. Well, I've stopped Poetry Thursday when it comes to reading through modern American poetry. I stopped with Howl, right? And I made that clear in the video. So I'm not going to get to Sexton, and I'm not going to get to Plath. Stephen Newton says, do you have an opinion on DC New Frontier comic? I have lots of opinions on it. Yeah. You can guess some of them. I don't like that the whole thing is about smoking. I hate that it venerates smoking so much. That you read the thing and you think, okay, well, the portrayal of the Martian Manhunter is really cool. The portrayal of Batman is really cool. You've got all these ordinary guys rubbing shoulders with these superpowered beings, and that's really cool and really well done. And of course, the climax is incredible. But also, you get the impression all throughout the book that pretty much the coolest thing, it's cool to be from Krypton. Sure, it's cool to be an Amazon. But pretty much the coolest thing you can do is smoke. And of course, I don't like that part. But, you know, looking beyond that obsession of mine, I love it. Just love it. Steve Bronstein says, why do you take issue with Heather Cox Richardson's activism on her podcast? Do you feel the same about Tim Snyder and other historians who do this as well? Well, I feel it less for Tim Snyder for obvious reasons, because he left the country. Uh, let's just say I take issue with it because I think that Heather Cock Richardson is wrong. I think her activism is wrong. Uh, Evil Joshua says, Steve, do you think King's Sorrow is markedly better than Stephen King's works? I enjoyed it a lot, but felt that it was similar weaknesses to King's work. The weaknesses are all the same. Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's better. It's a variation on King's work. I haven't know what to do with all the dude bros who very predictably on their YouTube channel said that King Sorrow is some sort of divine revelation of how good it is. It's just barely good, just that. Uh, uh, Arslan, okay. This handle is my name, I swear, but call me Aslan. Yeah, but I'm not going to remember to call you Aslan. No one online is going to remember your friendly version of the gobbledygook that is actually the handle that you chose. No one online is going to remember that, including me in this live stream. So Aslan, great for now, fantastic. I'm not attacking you, but this is the 21st century. This is almost 2030. So you need to scrap that handle. You need to scrap that handle. If your name, simply your name, Aslan, is not available, then Aslan plus something, Aslan the Great, Aslan the Golden, Aslan the Fun, one of those will certainly be available. And that is easy. And make sure to include the capital letters so that everyone can see where the words start and stop. But this, anyway, sorry, I'm yelling at you again. Any good big history of Imperial China that you recommend? Oh, there was one. Hasn't been one recently that I've really liked. There was one from a few years ago that was dull, but there was one like 40 years ago that was good. Oh boy. Well, I'm not going to help you because I don't remember any details about it. There aren't many to pick from in English that I know of. Thomas says, I love Phantom Stranger, maybe a James Gunn movie teamed up with John Constantine. Like I say on my channel, unlike in the 20th century, in the 21st century, I absolutely dread anything I love being adapted by anyone, anywhere connected with Hollywood. And I love the Phantom Stranger. So please don't adapt him. Please don't do that. Because if it, well, he's totally mysterious, so he might be non-binary. It'll be the very first thing that anybody thinks to do. Or James Gunn will have him quipping, and he doesn't. I pray that nothing I love is adapted. Now, sometimes that resolve weakens because the James Gunn Superman movie I just loved, but usually it's pretty strong. Um, Sean Patrick says, Steve, could you do a New England starter kit? A New England starter kit. One stipulation, you must include one, but not necessarily one book about Southie. Well, I would include a couple. Boyos would be on there, beyond a shadow of a doubt. I'm sure it would be. But I have done a New England starter kit. I'm sure that I have. Manny says, did you like Freeshoff Saga in the Longfellow translation? I love it. Absolutely love it. Balin says, hi, Steve. Very lucky to catch the stream. Just today finished my circumnavigation of the Aubrey Maturin novels, and I'm now suffering from post-reading depression. Any cure, barring Hornblower. Yeah, I know. I know what that feels like. I know what that feels like. You get caught up in the world of Aubrey and Maturin, and it is so wonderful. It is so wonderfully done. Now you're in a position, I'm assuming this is the first time you've ever done it. Now you're in a position to know what I always say to people who've never read it. When I'm in the midst of it or when I've just come out of it and nothing else will do, and they say, oh, it's seafaring, right? It's the sailing and the water and the cannons and all. When nothing could be further from the truth. That might be true with Hornblower, but it's not true with Aubrey and Maturin. Some of the greatest scenes in all of those books take place on land with no thought of sea action. It's his writing that does it, makes this whole world. You're not going to like it because it's very predictable for me, but the closest that I know is the Cromwell novels of Hilary Mantel. You're not going to like that because I say it all the time, but oh, the chat jumped again. All right, well, we were at Aubrey and Maturin. Let's see here. Oh God. 22 people here. Yeah, there we go. Sean Patrick, Steve, you once mentioned an Ian McEwan novel. You couldn't stop laughing and saying, "I don't know what he's doing," but you never elaborated. What did he do? Oh, it had to be Chesil Beach. It was really a novella. It's not really. It was not really a novel, and I still don't understand it. I chuckle every time I think of it because it's just I honestly don't know what he was doing in that novel. I really don't. I don't want to spoil anything because it's very short, but the the inciting incident, if you will, the premise is that a young newlywed couple goes to Chesil Beach for, I guess, a honeymoon, a kind of honeymoon, and they are in the honeymoon suite, and they do what comes naturally, and it horrifies her so much that she bolts out of the room and runs down the beach and is never the same person again. And the first time I read it, I started laughing, and then I thought, wait a minute, Ian McEwan doesn't know how to do comedy. No modern author knows how to do comedy. This cannot be comedy. So what is he doing here? What is this? And I still don't know. I still don't have any idea. Uh, Manny says, I also miss the Irish stew videos. Oh, and whatever this is, says I like the Irish stew videos too. And Heg says that he also loves the Irish stew videos. Okay, lots of votes for Irish stew. David Bergen says, I am reading The String of Pearls with the character Sweeney Todd. I'm 8 chapters in and considering DNFing it. How do you know when you've read enough to give a book a fair try? I trust all of you. I trust all of you. I know the DNF princesses that are out there, and I don't think any of you are. I trust it. I think you know that you want to drop this book, and you should if you do. I I don't think anybody that watches my channel regularly uh, is a DNF princess. So drop it. Read Wolf Hall instead. J. Scott Phillips says, "What's all this I hear about Barnes and Noble return to Boston?" I have not heard this. I haven't listened, but I haven't heard anything about this. Edward Gibbons says, "What do you think of the death of Virgil?" I love it. Absolutely love it. So ambitious and strange, but for me, very effective and uses the lifetimes and writing of Virgil to explore so much. Perhaps my favorite historical novel. Wow. We picked a winner. Well, it's really, really good. Really deserves to be back in print in English in some translation. Gandhi says, beside wine and calzones, what does your diet consist of, and do you partake of supplements? Well, when I don't have a guest, my diet does not partake of wine and calzones. That's only when I have a guest. Other than that, it's completely simple, very simple, and very negligent. I often don't remember to eat anything. It's just I'm here on the fainting couch. I've got my lovely little dog curled up on my lap. I'm writing and reading and having a ball of the time. I'm not thinking about it. And I don't take any supplements. No. Christopher says, why were you so repulsed by Chernow's biography of Washington? I'm halfway through and enjoying it, although I don't like how he describes what Washington was thinking. How would he know? I was repulsed by it because it apologizes for Washington at every turn. Washington in the book can do no wrong. None at all. Even being a brutal slave master is somehow excused in the book. It's just a gigantic running excuse for a dumb, evil, idiotic man. Which a Washington biography does not have to do that. I'm not saying that he wasn't important or brave, but in Chernow's idea, he's perfect. And that is a publishing thing. That is a canny publishing thing. That is Chernow saying, okay, well, I'm familiar with the primary documents. He's as familiar with the primary documents as I have. If you are familiar with the primary documents, you know you're not dealing with a saint. And he's familiar with those documents. And he just made a decision. I want to make $1 million killing at Father's Day. And serving up a stupid, militarily inept, bungling, racist, vicious person as George Washington will not do that. So I won't do that. And that's fraudulent. That is lying to your readers. Balin says, but people who get depressed from your Irish stew videos should just not watch them. Well, there are Steve Completists out there. There are people who like to check in with me every day. So I'm doing the video too. I agree, but I'm doing the video to them. They don't want to miss a video, and I want to see their faces. I like them, and they are useful for gauging the state of the U.S. The European media is useless as yours. Morgan says, what do you think of Borges' essays and nonfiction? Terrific. They're terrific. There used to be a beautiful trade paperback, deckled edges, French flaps, and everything that I don't have anymore. I really wish I could find that copy. The Brattle will provide, but I don't have that at the moment. Sean Patrick says, Steve, a while back you mentioned writing for a church bulletin. Do you still do that? Or no? No. JJ says, hey, Steve, do you ever read any Bukowski? No. J. Scott Phillips says, I'm not sure there's a good reason for a blob watch right now, but it would still give you an excuse to talk about the weather, which I do like to do. But I don't think there are any blobs at all. The weather people are going nuts because they want their subscribers, their view numbers went through the roof when they had this major storm a week ago, and they missed that, so they're sensationalizing. But I don't think there's anything to compare. Uh, okay, well, no, not really. No, very very quiet. Uh, I see a system in the Pacific Northwest and then a system in the South. So that will make its way up up to New England, and this might become something for the Upper Midwest. I doubt that it will reach New England. I'm pretty sure that that storm that we had was, a once a year thing. I don't think that's going to happen again. Uh, let's see here. Tyler says two modern poets I like are A.E. Stallings and Sharon Olds. I've been reading through the new Richard Scott in intervals, although I don't like it as much as his first collection. Stephen Newton says, I find my haven these days historical romance novels and westerns, although Lou L'Amour is right now the only western I have read so far, aside from Lonesome Dove, right? You've read Lonesome Dove, right? Uh, Aslan says, I read Dracula because of you last year. I think I prefer it to Frankenstein. It's better than Frankenstein. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I've never read comics, but I remember The Punisher being a big deal in the 1990s. I noticed, though, when people put on BookTube Talk Comics that character is never mentioned. Is he verboten? Well, no, he's not verboten, but he became a little bit of that to the holier than thou segment of comic book commentariat when rogue cops in the United States started using the Punisher symbol, co-opting the Punisher symbol. It even led Marvel Comics to briefly change the famous skull Punisher symbol. He's not verboten, no, but he is the definition of a one-note character. So some of his storylines have been really silly in the past 20 years. Barcode says, hey, hi, Steve. Do you have recommendations for a one-volume history of the Korean War? I like your recommendations of Hastings for the Vietnam War. Yeah, there is. Oh, God. I don't remember the name of it. I'm not going to be able to help you. There is a good one-volume Korean War from just like 10 years ago. I want to say it was called The Forgotten War, but every book on the Korean War is called The Forgotten War. I don't remember anything about it, but there was one. There was one out there. I'm sure that we can find it together. Uh, Aslan says, did you hear about Brandon Sanderson's deal with Apple TV? I'm not allowing myself to get excited. You shouldn't allow yourself to get excited. I did hear about the deal. But you shouldn't allow yourself to get excited unless you are excited by what you know it's going to be. You know what it's going to be. You know what it's going to end up being like. 4-foot tall girl bosses who don't need no man. You know you're going to get that. It has nothing to do with Brandon Sanderson. It has to do with the corporate ownership of Apple TV. So don't get excited. You're going to get Starfleet Academy. David Hume says, is David Irving's Hitler's War or any of his other books worth reading as history? Or are they all worthless Nazi apologia and a waste of time? Oh, where's David Murphy when I need him? We could talk to you about this for 5 hours. I would say, and I think he would agree with me, and also Christopher Hitchens would agree with me, that the first edition of Hitler's War is worth reading. It's also incredibly entertaining to read. That stays true in all of Irving's books. He is a terrific writer, just terrific. The first edition of Hitler's War, yes. Maybe his book on Rommel. In other words, his very early books. Once you're out of the very early books, once he is independent of academia, once he's independent of anything, once he's made enough money so he's independent of anything, once these people start to feel free, they start to throw the salute. And after that, he has been credibly accused of lying to his readers. He can read the sources, you can't. And if he's lying about what he's read, well, then he's not trustworthy. And if he's not trustworthy, then no. So an early edition of Hitler's War, sure. Before the later editions of Hitler's War remove the Holocaust, they basically remove the gas chambers and whatnot. They remove the intentional elimination of European Jewry. Or when they do mention it, they mention that it was the will of bungling underlings and racists, but that whenever Hitler learned anything about it, because he was busy doing other things, he objected to it. Absolute fantasy, Nazi fantasy. Well, David and I will have to do a video about that. Let's see here. Peyton says, "Well, what's your favorite vampire movie?" At least I didn't say Twilight. It's true. You didn't say Twilight. Just thought Van Helsing was super entertaining. It is super entertaining. Oh my god, it is super entertaining. Robbie Coltrane as Mr. Hyde. How can that not be entertaining? And the actor of Dracula did a good job of parting there. Come on, Dracula. Dracula himself is the weakest thing in that movie. Oh, come on. There's no way. But uh, the latest Nosferatu movie was terrific, just terrific. And you might also want to watch, if you can find it somewhere on some streaming service, the 1970s TV adaptation of Salem's Lot by Stephen King. You'll love it. Uh, and also, also, there are some really good bits in the Nicolas Cage Renfield series with what's his name, uh, Nicholas Holt as Renfield. There's some Nicholas Cage chews the scenery as Dracula in that movie, in that series, and he's really good, really entertaining. Uh, let's see here. Traumatic Tomes is here. Steve, did you review Coningsby when it first came out? I don't know what that's supposed to mean. I am, as you can see, a raven-haired, bee-sting-lipped, 8-pack abbed super hottie. Morgan says, you've said you like tech videos before. Have you ever seen stuff from James Schlotz? He modifies slash uses technology in a really interesting way. I think the name rings a bell. Christopher told me while he was here that channels like his are hitting hard times because of AI. That AI has made their practical repairs and teardowns incredibly expensive. And I haven't looked into that to see, how to what extent it's true. I'm sure that it is true, but I mean, I don't know what effect it's having on channels like that. Gandhi says, "Is the Cleopatra biography you referenced in an earlier video a revised edition? I showed is not coming out until September." Oh no, no, the Lucy Hughes Hallett book, it probably is September. It's not a revised edition at all. Steve Ronstein says, "Do you think Heather Cox Richardson activism is wrong because it's giving people false hope?" Yes, yes, of course, that's the reason. Yeah. Damien says, "Thanks for alerting me to the library having digital access to magazines. Didn't occur to me to check." It's been a revelation to me. I really do think that that my Angry Incel event for tonight is not going to include a book. I think I'm just going to do more magazine exploring. Some of the things in there I love reading, but I used to love reading them because I could read them at work. I had them at a newsstand at the place where I worked. I would never subscribe to them, and now I can just read them. Manny says, "Nice to hear you love Friedhoff. I've been rereading it recently in the original and I absolutely love it as well. I need to check out his translation. It's really good. It's pure Longfellow." Wild D. Woodward says 130 watching now. I don't think so. I don't. Would you watch this? Gandhi says, "Have you received an advanced copy of Josh Ireland's book on Trotsky?" Yes, I have. Haven't got to it yet, but I have. It's soon. It's coming to bear. Uh, Nick says, "I skipped the Howl Poetry Thursday as I dislike Ginsberg. I was unaware that it ended the series. Are there any journalists whose work you recommend to someone who likes Liebling and Dorothy Kilgallen?" The usuals for the journalists of Liebling's era would be fine. You will like them all. Balin says, "But Dr. Steve, I have read the Cromwell saga already. Can't you just recommend Resurrect O'Brien for me?" I'm afraid I can't. I wish I could. I think indulged in the usual habit of people who ask me questions, whether it's in Q&As or in a live stream, of then telling me what I may not answer. Which Steve does not particularly like. I don't know if your prescription against Hornblower means you haven't read Hornblower. If you haven't, you should. But you might want to also try the Alan Lurie novels of Dewey Lambton. They're set in the same time as Aubrey and Maturin, but they are a completely different tone, and they are really, really readable. They're nowhere near as beautifully written. For that, you need an Irishman. But they're really enjoyable. I don't know how many of them are in print. Dewey Lambdin is the author's name, Lambdin, but they are really worth your time if you can find them. David Hume says, "Are Patrick O'Brien's non-Aubrey novels good? Which ones would you recommend?" Wouldn't recommend any of them. Andrew says, "I bought the Harlan Ellison biography after your recommendation. Did you ever cross paths with him or see him lecture?" I never saw him lecture. I did cross paths with him at a few conventions. David Hume says, "Oh, and I also vote for the return of the Irish stew videos." Good lord! And another person, Kevin Bork, saying, "Yes, Irish stew. Either that or we listen to Heather." Oh, Sean Patrick says, "Steve, my wife is a member of the Book of the Month Club, and she enjoys it. But I notice when I look at their selections that just say they aren't geared towards me. Why are they doing this?" Well, they're doing it for profitability, and it's worked. They revamped themselves, and it worked. I don't agree with it. The Book of the Month Club, forever and ever, despite its bad press in the world of the New York Review and the hoity-toits, forever and ever, the Book of the Month Club allowed you the opportunity. It didn't require, but it allowed you the opportunity to push the boundaries of your reading, to explore new things. They also had a lot of their own editions and their own remainders. Now they are just bestsellers with their stamp on the spine, and it's great. It feels very like a club. Their rebranding worked, so people feel the magic of the club. It gets people enthused about reading again. Great, all of that is great, absolutely fantastic. I love hearing that your wife loves them, but I agree with you completely. For 50 years, Book of the Month Club. I almost never was a member, but I always looked at it and thought I would find stuff there. I I would excuse me. I would find stuff there, definitely. Now, no. No, absolutely not. Now it is well, I don't wanna say least common denominator, but they are very easy choices. There is nothing that will challenge any reader of any kind, and I just wish that weren't true. I wish that they offered 20 books a month, for instance, some more challenging or abstruse than others. Uh, let's see here. Morgan says, "Did you like Hugh Laurie's novel from the '90s, The Gun Seller?" I think no, not really. Jake says, "Hello from Australia. How many books do you read a week?" Well, the number's not believable, right? Even I know that the number's not believable, especially lately. it's a it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a monthly total for most really serious readers. And, but I'm yearning. I'm wistful when you mention Australia. I've never been to Australia. Whole kind of dog I have never smooched with. Rasmus says, "Do you think you'll still enjoy reading if you could read only at the pace of an average American reader, about 250 words per minute?" Well, I might come to enjoy it somehow. I mean, we all would have to live with a handicap of some kind. I mean, if I lost a leg, I would have to adapt. That's 250 words per minute. Oh my God. Manny N says, "Based on your recommendation, I've also read Robinson Crusoe, which I found to be fascinating and too little talked about in our times." Well, you can understand why, right? And now I'm off to Moll Flanders. All right. Well, you're going to like Moll Flanders, I think, although that's also not talked about, not as much as Robinson Crusoe. Robinson Crusoe is radioactive. Aslan says, "What did you make of Men in the Sun by Ghassan Kanafani?" It destroyed me when I read it. I have not read it. Cole Fornia says, "Stevestream is back for now." Yes. Somebody earlier said that there are 100 people, 100 something people watching, but I don't believe that. Uh, Tori Reed says, "I may read Robert Fisk's Great War for Civilization after I'm done with the Odyssey. Are you a fan of that book and his work in general?" I am. Both. I am a fan of both. Great War for Civilization is fantastic. It's big, but it's fantastic. Uh, California says, "What do you think of John Aubrey's Brief Lives?" I love it. I love it. Steve Bronski says, "Do you think JD Vance taking power would be better or worse?" JD Vance will never take power. Tim Snyder speculates he would use Stephen Miller as a scapegoat in a cynical anti-Semitic play to distance himself from unpopular policy. It doesn't matter that the policies are not popular. The populace is not involved anymore. It doesn't matter that Trump is polling poorly. It doesn't matter anymore. Unless I guess you talk to Heather Cox Richardson, who somehow can say that the resistance is really important, and people need to think up all these different ways, or Park Rose permaculture. We need to think of all these different ways, and they're saying these things while they are looking at news stories about the fascist regime that runs this country seizing voting data, marching armed men into polling places in Georgia. Uh, JD Vance is never going to be president. Trump is going to be president until 2047. So, Dylan says, recently read my first Steinbeck since I was in school. His novel about Henry Morgan, was it a bad choice, or was he always so plotting and sexist? I just didn't remember that fact. It's a little bit of both. That novel is a bad choice. Anybody would say that. Even Steinbeck fans would say that. You could definitely do better. I wouldn't. I mean, the plotting and the sexism was definitely part of it, but I would go for something else before you write him off completely, because there's more to him than that. Morgan says, I have that deckled edge copy of Borges fiction and nonfiction. I know. I once had both of them. I knew that they were landmark publications of Borges in English. I knew that when I had them, and somehow I don't have them anymore. It's still available and hefty, costly too, but worth it. He's so prolific, it feels like a real library of work. Well, I don't have to worry about the costly part, because your mention of it on a Stevestream in front of all these Donna Huguenots means you're going to send it to me, right? Right. That's what that means. California says, could you do a Milton starter kit, please? Why? Why would I do that? When you know as well as I do, no, a starter kit is not a complete works. Recommending Paradise Lost is plenty Everest enough without more stuff. Gandhi says, so glad January is over. I loathe the winter. Well, I loathe it too nowadays, but I'm stuck in the middle of it. So, uh, Wild Die Woodward says it was 82 Fahrenheit here in sunny Southern California. I remember. I remember. I lived there for a while in Hermosa Beach before it became $5,000 for a parking meter. So here's the parking meter. Here's a tap for your card. Staying for an hour. Are we going to need an hour, honey? The meter says it's $5,000. So you can't live in Hermosa Beach anymore, but I did. Back when you could, I did. And I fell in love with the fact that it was reliably paradise. That reading guy's back. Hey, Steve, what do you think of the popularity of heated rivalry? You used to read gay hockey romances for that romance event a few years ago. Yes, I am well familiar with the world of gay hockey romance. And the popularity of heated rivalry is just a bandwagon. Every once in a while, these things happen. These brush fires happen where something that is decidedly middling, it's decidedly middling. And also, obviously, when you watch it, I don't know if you've seen it, but when you watch it, you can tell. I was almost tempted to study the closing credits, or look on IMDb or Wikipedia and look at the production credits to find out which company is listed that is simply the shadow company for a big tobacco producer, because it's a commercial for smoking. It's nothing about this. This is not exceptional in any way. It's just it's a bandwagon. That's all. Uh, let's see here. Stephen Newton is back. Lonesome Dove is on my must-read list this year. You haven't read Lonesome Dove? Okay. Sean Patrick says, Steve, thanks for the recommendation of the site's standard ebooks. Their inventory is somewhat limited, but the books are fantastically presented for e-readers. Any others besides Gutenberg that you like? I haven't even really delved into standard ebooks. Project Gutenberg is just fine by me, but no, I don't have any other recommendations. No. Manny says, don't remind me of Lonesome Dove. You make me want to reread both Lonesome Dove and Moving On. Why shouldn't you? Why shouldn't you? Oh, or are you one of those rereaders who's always worried about rereading because there are all the new books out there? I would understand. I hit a nerve with a lot of those people when I made a video about rereading. Balin says, you have said you have spent a lot of time at sea. What is the appeal of sailing for you? How was it? How was it being far from any help in the middle of a storm? I've heard it being called a profound experience. I loved it for that reason. It's so beautiful, and I wasn't far away from people because I brought my people with me. I had my beagles with me, so I had company. So I wasn't lonely. Storms were another thing. Storms on the open ocean are, I mean, there's nothing you can do. If you don't spot them or if you don't know about them early enough. I so envy the people who have these storm watching radar GPS monitor technology on even a small craft now. Incredible. When I did it, you had to know what the horizon looked like and just take your best guess. And you learned some signs by what the water was doing around you, but storms were rough. Yeah, you had to you had to be on, and I had to make sure that my boys were stowed away nice and secure, because if they're on deck, they're gone. But I loved it, and it was profound. It's a dumb word, but it was not calling you dumb. People use that word all the time, and it's a little bit of a trite word, but in this case, it definitely applied. Uh, Thomas says, "Is Diana DeRosso's slim bio of James Mason on your bookshelf? If not, try it." Gandhi says, "I love Max Hastings' book on Vietnam. I did too. I wish I had a copy. I'd like to reread it." The Dog and Books says, "Hi, Steve. Which of Anthony Trollope's works do you recommend starting with? Also, love your channel and look forward to your videos every day." Well, isn't that nice? With Trollope, I usually recommend you want to get used to him. Before you get to the full glories of Trollope in full gallop, you want to get used to him first. So I always recommend The Warden. It has the benefit of being the first book in a series. A lot of people like that. It's a very short novel, one of Trollope's most popular short novels, and it will introduce you to a lot of the things that he likes to do. This is not just a question of the plot with him; it's a question of the way he tells you his stories. You have to get used to that. And by the time you're done with The Warden, I think you will be used to it. I think you'll love it, and that puts you in a perfect position to move on to Barchester Towers, which is a genuine masterpiece. He only has like 5 or 6 genuine masterpieces, and Barchester Towers is one of them. You'll be in perfect position to read it, and it's twice as long. Um, Gandhi says, "I enjoy Stephen Kotkin's lectures. However, I find his writing rather dry." He is a little on the dry side, isn't he? Just a bit. His books are so good that I tend to overlook it. Alejandro says, "Hedgehog, hedgehog." Yes, I don't think saying his name is going to summon him, but yes, he was once here. I did briefly for a week have a hedgehog infestation, and it was wonderful. Uh, I am looking around me now. I am looking for a good-looking young man, and there are none. There are none. I've got a light bulb that needs changing. I've got lots and lots of tedious stories to tell over wine and calzones, and there's none. There's none. David Bergen says, "Will Steve streams be co-hosted in your micro apartment with Robin Song Reads?" I don't know. It'll depend on the strength of our Wi-Fi, but it can't be co-hosted because he'll be at work. He'll be providing for us, but he'll be ignoring me. Uh, Balin says, the kind "This Kind of War" by Feuerbach was a fascinating book about the Korean War. That's not the one I'm thinking of, though. There's one I'm thinking of that I really recommend, and that's not that. Christopher says, "Any books covering the 19th century American conflicts, wars outside the Civil War? I'm reading about the Nez Perce War of 1877, and I'm fascinated by these lesser-known conflicts in American history." Well, yeah, there are plenty of books on that subject. If you go to the Oxford History of the American Peoples, I think they have 2 volumes. There's one volume that definitely covers the Civil War, but you very much, I forget the name of it, you very much notice that it's just part of the book. What is the name of that one? I've read it twice. You'd think I'd remember the name. I want to say A Land Without Borders or something like that. But if you go to that series, you'll find at least one volume that does just what you want. Uh, No Well Okay says, "Love the Daily Penguin series. Re-inspired my reading life." How wonderful. Andrew says, "Is 28 years later the Bone Temple worth a look?" Yes. Uh, AKA JK says, "Hey Steve, I've been just over a year since I stopped eating any meat after you gave me a well-needed nudge. Just wanted to thank you. I cook great tofu dishes now." Uh, Christian says, "Hi Steve, I've been meaning to tell you I picked up The Three Lives of James Madison by Noah Feldman, and when I got home, I realized it has one of your blurbs." Yes, it does. My Mayday, such a lovely surprise. Well, I've never seen that. I've never seen a copy of that book in paperback. Publishers never send me paperbacks, so I have no idea how many of my blurbs are out there. But I've never seen that one. I keep waiting to find it in the wild, but so far, no. Some Okie Dude says, "Funnily, I saw a book about Washington. I believe it's called America's Very First President. Seemed very tongue-in-cheek. I thought of you and your undying enmity for Washington." I don't have enmity for Washington. I just would like a fair record. I'm unlikely to get it with the founding father and founding deity of an entire nation, but I would like it. If it can be done for other people, then it should be possible for Washington. Sean Patrick says, "Based on your purported age, if you were just a bit younger, Wolf Hall would hit public domain when you're in your late 90s. We'd expect a read aloud." Well, I'll try. I'll try. That reading guy says, "Why do you like being an angry incel here on BookTube?" Well, I don't have a choice, right? The in part of incel is involuntary. Morgan says, "The Wayne Eastwood was about acting, especially in westerns, but beyond too. Sorry, I'm not sure what your reaction means." It implies, given I've missed, many Western fans I know are split on it, they are wrong. If they are split on the question of John Wayne or Clint Eastwood, they are wrong. It's John Wayne and Clint who? It's just John Wayne with nothing around but lone and level sands stretching far away. uh, AKA says, I ended my 2025 by reading The Quiet American and really enjoyed it. Would you recommend any of the film adaptations? Not really. No, I don't think the big one that I'm supposed to like, the Brendan Fraser one, I don't like. No, I don't like any of the film adaptations, but I like the book. I feel sorry. I still feel sorry that I let Dr. November down by not joining in the fun about it. I was in a very disillusioned moment of my relationship with BookTube at the time, and it was just bad timing because no one involved with Dr. No was to blame. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I thought McMeekin's Stalin's War made some provocative points. What did you think of it? Yeah, I know the provocative points. I think I know at least one of them that you're talking about. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Wished I owned a copy. I had the galley copy. I had the hardcover. I even had the trade paperback from the publisher, and I got rid of all of them. I don't have any of them now. That reading guy says, did we get a Bean watch yet? Well, got a few. She's right here. She has commandeered my hand, so I can't lift my hand. She does that a lot nowadays. She's not enough that she's pressed against me. She wants to make absolutely sure, even in her sleep, that I am right here. uh, uh, Morgan says, I think Scholes will be okay, Steve, because he's a big niche and sells very affordable resources people find useful for studying and routine. Well, I hope so. I hope all of those channels. I used to watch teardown videos all the time. I hope they're all okay. Manny says, also speaking of screeners, have you watched the new Wuthering Heights movie? Yes, I have. Yes. From the trailer, it seems like some blasphemous bar talk version of the book talk version of the masterpiece. It's bloody awful. I expect it to sweep the Oscars. Gandhi says, what is your take on the reports that Trump recently suffered a stroke? Do you think he will suffer a fate similar to Stalin, dying in his bed? He will die in his bed. Yes. And I don't doubt that he suffered a stroke. The visual evidence is irrefutable. Some sort of TIA. He had some sort of thing like that. But he will die in his bed. Yeah. In the residence of the White House in 2047. The Fisher King says, hi, Steve. I've been doing a reading project of the great Chinese classics of late, and I've been absolutely loving Journey to the West. Just wondering what you think of it and other Chinese classics. Well, the Great Five, I've all read, all in English. I can't read the original, and I've loved them all in their various ways. That reading guy says we need a blasphemous book talk movie of Steve's traveling days. Yes, yes. If it were going to be just as convincing as that Wuthering Heights, it would also star Elordi. Oh, God help us. Flavor of the month. Stephen Newton says, every time I see a Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, I hate what they did to Mina more and more. It's a solid movie, but that one choice kills it for me. Really? I guess I could see that. I mean, there's a point to be made there, but it's such an entertaining movie. It's so good. Yeah. I guess I see that. We could agree to disagree if we watched it here over wine and calzones. AKA says, I'm about to finish the Walking Dead TV show and have thoroughly enjoyed it. Do you have any thoughts on it and the source material? Is the source material any good? The source material is good. It can't hold a candle to the adaptation. Obviously, if you're talking about zombies, you're going to be hard pressed on a static page to equal what you can do with dread or visual appeal in a show. As always, as not always, but usually, I think it ran too long. The TV show, I think it ran way too long, but I liked it. Some Okie dude says The Walking Dead is my favorite comic, far superior to the show, in my humble opinion. Oh, it does peter out towards the end, unfortunately. Manny says, yeah, regarding the Robinson Crusoe, I checked Goodreads after, and yeah, I think I know what I think you know what I found there in the review. So I know I haven't checked, but I know what you found. Definitely. Morgan says, what do you think of the BookTube channel read/read? I like him, very passionate. He's very passionate. Some Okie dude says, I'm reading A Rage in Harlem and The Good Lord Bird, which funnily has cross-dressing people in both. That wasn't intentional, but here we are. California says, is Richard Rhodes' Arsenal Folly worth reading? Yes. Balin says, we need Steve lore videos where Steve tells stories of his travels, casually teasing getting into a knife fight in the Amazon and then just moving on. Do you know what you do to me? Well, I didn't have a knife. Just to be clear, it wasn't a knife fight because I didn't have a knife. I didn't have any weapons. My weapons were all outside, relaxing in the dirt. Uh, Stephen Newton says, I have been watching some Chinese period piece dramas of late, and it's made me wonder if there's any English translations of any Chinese novels that are a good period piece that you know of. I don't think I understand the question. I think my answer is probably no. Alexandra says the stew videos actually helped me with the depression. I thought they would make you more depressed. It was good to see there are still people in the U.S. who can see what I see and put it into words. Sean Patrick says, Steve, are going to become as familiar with the library as you are with the Brattle. Will it become another schmooze fest? Those librarians might not get your humor. Well, I don't think I'll become as familiar with going there as I do the Brattle I go to in person. I can't see myself doing that with the library. Peyton says, I read somewhere that Genesis is an anagram for genes and Adam for Adam and Eve for being pulled from the rib of Adam's mean Adam being spliced and it's code for cloning. Do you agree with this theory? Of course I don't. Of course I don't. The book of Genesis was composed 2,800 years ago. No one at the time knew anything about cloning or atoms or anything else. No, of course I don't. No. It was written by Stone Age primitives who knew nothing about any of that. So it's not a theory. It's just preaching. Coldifornia says, do you have a recommended essential list about movie/film history? No. A lot of favorite books on the subject, but not a starter kit. No. Alexandra says, I understand the guy who had Gibbon as a haven is a great way to escape the present. I found it mysterious at first because when I first learned that was his coping mechanism, as we call it now, I had not yet read Gibbon. Now that I have, I do understand it. I don't know that it would be Gibbon for me. It might for me be Macaulay. Uh, Morgan says, I would happily send Borges, Dear Steve, as your president did not make it so bloody expensive. If you've ever forced to return to England by that pesky hedgehog, let me know. Board and Borges covered. My traveling days are over, so I will not be visiting England. But I understand what you mean. Yeah, it's way too expensive to mail things overseas. Some Okie Dude says, Lonesome Dove's one of those rare books where the hype is indeed warranted. Yep. California says, are there any books you'd recommend on Magellan's voyage? Yeah, there was a Magellan book. When was it? It was in the 90s, I think. I'm no good at any of these things. When you spring these on me, and half the time I do remember, the other half I don't. There is a good book, at least one, I should say. I'm sure there are plenty of good books on Magellan. There's one that I know of that I really like, but I'm not going to be any help to you. Manny says, I am not rereading Lonesome Dove and moving on now because I'm rereading War and Freaking Peace. I'm human. Okay. All right. I guess that gets a pass. That reading guy's back. Thank you for recommending Susan Mallory. I read one of her summer books last month and I couldn't put it down. Boy, can she write great characters. Yeah, one of the reigning trio or quartet of summer authors. So you really do feel it. Danger Kid was up next, but the chat jumped. Here, let's go and find you. It was Danger Kid, who I think is making his debut appearance in the chat. So we can't miss that. There we go. I thought Connor Story's performance as Ilya in Heated Rivalry was the clear standout. Clear standout, but from Shrubbery. So I guess it was good. JJ says, do you have any Robert Bloch picks? His Jack the Ripper novel. It's my favorite, of course. Mandy says, and I've been reading the Canterbury Tales for the first time as well, so don't be so hard on me. The Canterbury Tales as well. Are you reading Chaucer or are you reading Neville Coghill? A modernized version. Some Okie Dude says, I don't know if you've read it already, but I wanted to recommend to you Love Me, Fierce, in Danger from the Steve Powell, a very good biography of James Elroy. I don't know if you've read it is awful close to a have you read question. Let's just move on. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I know people who swear by taking vitamins, but if you eat a reasonably healthy diet, do you think you need them? It is a good idea to do. You have to be very careful to vet, what company, what particular thing you go with. Even supplements are technically a very good idea, especially if you don't have the time or the wherewithal or the regular routine of making yourself a really good meal. One solid, big, really good meal a day. So a big heaping plate of steamed rice with vegetables, maybe a banana on the side, a glass of really good non-sugared orange juice. Something like if you don't do that regularly, then you are not getting the vitamins that your body needs. It's trying hard to leach them out of other things that you eat. But vitamins would help a lot in that regard. Just be very careful about the vetting. Vet carefully where you get them because there are plenty of uh, dodgy people out there. Uh, let's see here. Eponym says, I found a free Italian copy of Tasso's Jerusalem Liberated the other day. Do you happen to know any good English translations of it? No. I've read, I think there have been 3 English language translations. I have all 3 of them in a little book room. None of them's particularly good. Coldifornia says, I've been watching your earlier videos and you really fixate on Oliver Wendell Holmes, Jr. and Senior. Would you ever do a Wendell Holmes essential list? Bit of a long shot. Yeah, no, I would not. Of course not. Nobody even knows who he is. Nobody cares at all. And none of his books are in print. David Hume says, regarding sailing, did you like Robert Redford's film All Is Lost? I did, but I've never been on a boat in the middle of the ocean. I did like it. Yeah, I did. That reading guy says, imagine saying a writer only has 5 or 6 masterpieces. How many writers have 5 or 6 good books, let alone masterpieces? What about your masterpieces? When will you self-publish them? I would like to in 2026, at least 1, maybe 2. Dylan High says, thanks for the answer about Steinbeck, Steve. I'll give him another go in a few months. Whilst it was mostly bad, this recent read did have 1 or 2 good scenes, so at least it wasn't all bad. Yeah, Steinbeck never completely let you down. Sean Patrick says, Steve, in a previous live stream, who remembers them, you stuck up for Bozois, but I have met a few, and I have to say there's very little going on in those heads. Well, I didn't call them smart. I do stick up for them. I kind of agree. There's precious little going on in those skinny heads of theirs, but they are adorable in their own way. They are adorable. David Hume says, Bone Temple is great. Okay, great. We agree. Karen Potter says, yes, Heather Cox Richards is a great historian, but misleading and delusional on politics. Are you familiar with Hawk's podcast from California? Yes, I am. Yep. And he at least strikes the right note, although he doesn't go far enough. I assume with most of these people that the reason they don't go far enough is because they don't read. I don't think Hawk reads books. But I can't use that with Heather Cox Richards, and I have no idea what her excuse is. She has got to know what 1930s Germany looked like. She has got to know that. Oh, what's the matter, baby? Why are you sitting up? You getting antsy? You want to come up on your here? Oh, that was your hip, wasn't it? You poor little thing. Want to go up there? You can do it. Oh, there you go. Where were we? Oh my God. That reading guy says, have you gotten over your existential crisis about your bookshelf tour? Not really. No. You know what would get me over my existential crisis about my bookshelf tour? Selling 4,000 books to the Brattle would do that. Coldifornia says, what do you think of the movie Gods and Monsters with Ian McKellen and Brendan Fraser? Right. It comes up. It's good, I guess. It's heavy-handed, but it's good. Jake says, I can't tell if Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities is brilliant or drivel. What say you? Well, I think you can't tell because it's even parts of both. That's the problem with it. It and If on a Winter's Night a Traveler are the primary examples I have that I keep coming back to in my head, and that I've come back to in various discussions over the decades of why Calvino ultimately isn't worth reading in English. I think not at all. I was told, oh God, 40 years ago, I was told The Baron of the Trees was just an absolute masterpiece. I read it and thought, what is this crap? Did a high school student write this? And then I got the fallback, it's just a translation. So I read it in the original, and it's just as bad. The reason why Invisible Cities is both brilliant for a couple of parts and also drivel for most of it. J. Scott Phillips says, who's the best on-screen George Washington? I can't think of any convincing ones. Oh my God, what's his name? I'm blanking on his name from the Newsroom. The actor is the main character in the Newsroom. He did Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird on Broadway. I'm completely blanking on his name, but he was pretty good as Washington. Uh, I can't believe I'm not remembering his name. I like his work, but, anyway, it's him. It's the guy from The Newsroom. Some Okie Dude says, "Do you think Burr from Vidal is worth a read?" Yes. I know you're fond of Julian from him, but I was surprised to see its omission on your big historical fiction master list. Well, I had to omit some things, right? Uh, some Okie Dude says, "I like David Morse's Washington and John Adams." Y- Yeah, I cannot fault David Morse. I absolutely love his work, but I think I just everything about John Adams, the series was wrong. All of it was wrong. Basically, all of it was wrong. I'm not just sore about its weird, downright weird portrayal of Samuel Adams, but but why does David Morse's Washington look the way he does? Why does he act the way he does? He acts like he's a visitor from Mars. Anyway, David Morse was great in House, right? Coldifornia says, "Would you do an essential slash tartar kit for James Fenimore Cooper?" Why? Why would I do that? Sean Patrick says, "Steve, I was told for years the great actor Gary Cooper was. Well, I've got to tell you, I saw him in For Whom the Bell Tolls. I thought I was watching a robot. What am I missing? You're not missing anything. I've been told for years that he was great too. He's terrible. He stinks, including in real life. so, yeah, don't doubt the don't doubt the evidence of your own eyes unless it contradicts Steve. If Steve tells you that the sky is yellow, then the sky is yellow. But other than that, trust your eyes. There is no universe in which you can watch a Gary Cooper movie and say that he's a great actor, and watch a movie made in the same year starring Cary Grant and say they're both great actors. Then what does great acting mean? So anyway, some Okie Dude says also the guy who played Washington in Turn was pretty good too. Danger Kid says, "Steve, is the new book on Truman the most awful responsibility worth reading?" No. David Hume says, "Favorite John Wayne movie, The Shootist. It is so good. It gets me every time I watch it." I agree. It is great. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it is great. It is watched every time I have a guest, whether they like it or not. When David Murphy comes over, he and I, that is a sure way to put a smile on the evening is to watch parts of The Shootist. I don't think we've ever sat and watched it all at once. From the epic opening, I find another line of work. This one sure don't fit your pistol all the way to the very end, the last minute. Ron Howard's fateful decision. Oh my God, what a movie! But anyway, Morgan says, "Did you enjoy the Watchmen TV show?" No, no, I did not. Sean Patrick says, "Steve, does it matter who translates Jules Verne? Do any stand out?" It does matter because Jules Verne's publication history is famously patchy in English. Some of the most popular and widely reprinted early translations of, for instance, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea are demonstrably bad. And all you have to do is go on Wikipedia and look up Jules Verne translations. You'll get the whole story and you will know most of those are gone now. So it's easy to avoid them unless you're doing secondhand shopping. Uh, I don't have translator names off the top of my head, but some modern translation of Verne is better than any older one. That reading guy says, "If you spend so much time reading and writing, when do you take time to watch movies?" I have lots of time. I'm not a drooling blob of protoplasm on my pillow for 10 hours out of every 24. Colombian Thunder says, "Oh no, late for a Stevestream. Yeah, we have to wrap this up. We can go until 9. Recently just finished Don Winslow's Power of the Dog and enjoyed it. Now reading Pride and Prejudice for the first time. Oh my God." Gandhi says, "Do you go food shopping or is that a task for your surly houseboy?" My surly houseboy does some of it. And also I have the miracle of Amazon food delivery. I don't go food shopping in person on my own. No, I did that forever. I don't anymore. It's just not convenient. Not compared to Amazon dropping off food on the front porch. No, it's just not convenient. If I had once upon a time, right across the street from where I live, just literally 1 minute walk away, there was a great Whole Foods supermarket that opened up in the weirdest spot, in the weirdest place. When they opened, I thought, you had to do a study of the neighborhood. You know that you don't have patronage here for this kind of frou frou food. But they opened up anyway, and they were in business for years, and that was a dream come true. But of course, they closed because there isn't any. It was a weird place to put a grocery store. Uh, California says, I love Robinson Crusoe. I feel like its subject matter broadly feels fairly modern in terms of genre tastes. Well, in terms of modern readers, you are largely alone in that position, obviously. The chat jumped again. Oh my God. All right. California says, I've also read Journal of the Plague Year. Defoe has yet to disappoint. AKA says, I don't think I've ever been as invested in the safety of a group of characters as I was with the Walking Dead show. Also, following a lead who constantly tries to do good is a pleasant rarity. Yep. Balin says, John Wayne was a monster of a man, though. Yeah, who cares? California says, do you enjoy Winston Graham at all? Not really, no. Gandhi says, have you always required minimal sleep? Yep. Sean Patrick says, Steve, the book Hollywood Babylon, Trash or Treasure. My mom, a little old Italian lady, loved it. It's really good. It is trash, but it's really good. AKA says, I'll probably start The Ones Who Live Walking Dead spinoff tomorrow. Do you watch that or any other spinoffs? Why would you do that? Is that hooked on it that you're going to watch spinoffs? Why would you do that? Have you watched the reboot of Battlestar Galactica? Have you watched Deadwood? That reading guy says, will you continue your Lord of the Rings videos? There are a few things I enjoy more than watching you deep dive into why you love Lord of the Rings. If only you could do that with every book you love. Well, I could do that with every book I love, couldn't I? I could do that with The Praise of Folly tomorrow if I wanted to. I will. I should continue Lord of the Rings. I stopped because it occurred to me that I was discussing these same chapters, chapter by chapter, just 2 years ago on this channel. I thought that's a little much for the same book. Morgan says, I don't know. Eastwood in The Beguiled is quite the role. Such an absurd story. It's almost comic, and he sells it really well with his duplicitous face. California says, what is your favorite story from the Canterbury Tales? Oh, probably the Nun's Priest story, but I don't know that I'd be able to pick one. Leo Picara says, do you like The Alteration or any other book besides Lucky Jim? I think the most of Kingsley Amos's other novels, other than Lucky Jim, are pretty thin gruel. They have little bits and pieces of good stuff in them, but you have to be a Kingsley Amos fan. And Lucky Jim made a lot of Kingsley Amos fans. I think that's why those books are that way. Manny says, I am reading Chaucer, just Chaucer. This Norton Critical Edition is helpful, although I barely find myself checking the notes because it's basically just English. Yeah, you get used to it. Gandhi says, I thought McCullough's book on Truman was overly biased in his favor. It was. It wasn't as bad as Chernow on Washington, but it was. It was. Stack of My Own says, Steve, I subscribed to your Substack to read your backlog. Will you allow me an indulgence? Which ship did you intend Voyager to meet in your story? Well, it wasn't so much a ship as it was a captain. Captain Amazov. There's a great Voyager two-parter where Janeway decides that faced with impossible circumstances, she has to try and strike a deal with the Borg. Otherwise, they will be annihilated. And Chakotay is against the decision. The crew doesn't know what to make of it. Janeway is wondering, should we not do it? Should we turn around and retreat to safer space and just give up on the idea of getting back to our part of the Alpha Quadrant? And there's a great scene where Chakotay interrupts her where she is studying at her desk. She says she's going over the log entries of every captain who's ever encountered the Borg. And it's a really good scene because Chakotay starts to smile. She says, well, obviously I must have said something funny. Why are you smiling? And Chakotay says, well, when you were reading their logs, you were unconsciously imitating their voice patterns. And she doesn't believe it at first. And that was great. And Captain Amazov is mentioned. His entry is one of the things she reads. It's the only time he's ever mentioned in Star Trek. And Chakotay unhesitatingly groups him with Picard as one of the greats. So I thought, okay, well, he's alive. He's working with at the same time, as generally speaking, the same time as Voyager, so they could meet. And I wanted to portray him and his crew and their ship is a class of Starfleet vessel at the time of Voyager that drastically outclasses Voyager. More armaments, more sensors, more crew, more everything. So if, for instance, the story were to devolve into a straight up fight between the two starships, Voyager would not have a chance. I thought that was interesting. Uh, California says, any recommended books on the history of Japanese prison camps during World War II? Well, it's not a pet subject of mine. I've read a couple. There have been a couple of dedicated books in the last 20 years, and they didn't stand out as anything great. But no, I don't have a specific recommendation. AKA says, are there any super popular young actors who you think warrant the hype? Off the top of my head, no one comes to mind. Uh, Gandhi says, regarding, oh, he's talking to someone else. Okay, Gandhi says, Winslow also announced a few years ago he was retiring from writing and just released another book. Yes, and who was the only person anywhere in the critical world who said that's a stupid lie? Of course, you're going to write a book within a couple of years. Who's the only person who said that? Me. That's who. Some Okie dude said, Gandhi, artists don't retire. Oh, right, you're talking to each other. AKA says, you could view your endless bookshelf tours the same way as you repeating the same tag videos. There are always new people showing up to listen to the Dude Bro King talk about books. Jeff Daniels, some Okie dude reminds me, is Jeff Daniels, of course. Yes. Uh, uh, let's see here. A whole bunch of people talking to each other. Stephen Newton says, do you know if the Chinese classic, The Water Margin, is any good? It's wonderful. I wish I had a copy of it. I had a wonderful, a very elegant little hardcover with beautiful illustrations. I don't have it anymore. I think at the time when I was getting rid of it, I just assumed that Penguin would print a copy of it somewhere down the line. Their Chinese representation is terrible. Steve Bronstein says, any Democrats not putting up a fight because they're bought, cowardly, or they understand it would be futile, it's still infuriating to me. Or are Democrats not putting up a fight? I think that most of the Democrats in American politics right now are just waiting on the midterms. Well, the midterms will sort it all out. The system is sound. We're all still shaking hands across the aisle. We're all still gentlemen. So the system will sort itself out. I think they honestly think that. I think they're that dumb. Jeff Daniels played Atticus Finch on Broadway. Yes. Okay. Morse's nose in Washington was quite distracting. Yes. That reading guy says, have you ever done a short story starter kit? That would be fun. I'm sure I have. Gandhi says, is responding to someone else. California says, I'm very interested in reading Church Committee Report. You mentioned the Norton published. Yeah, I don't know if they published it yet. I think it's probably out by now. It's a strange volume. It's really good. Good on them. What a benefit to the reading public to have such an intelligent recension of that whole thing out there. I could have done with more annotation, but what a book. Let's see here. Some Okie dude says my favorite Wayne movie is still The Searchers. I know The Searchers ranks very popularly, but someone mentioned The Shootist. It's kind of tough to get around that with me. There's pretty much only one John Wayne movie that will do that. California says, thoughts on FDR? Could you recommend a favorite book about him? A favorite book about him? The paperback of Robert Dalek's 1-volume biography of him. Strongly recommend that. Comes well blurbed. Dalek's book is good. Dalek's book is really good. FDR is, I think, one of those figures a lot like Lincoln, where the strongest books written about him are written about shards of him, not the whole. I think that is largely true for him. Definitely don't read Conrad Black's book. I know it's tempting because it's like 1,500 pages long. You think you're getting everything, but definitely don't do it. Some Okie dude says Winslow was full of crap. Yes, was and still is. Oh God, the chat jumped again. Oh, we can't look at the size of this thing. Okay, we can't get to all of these. It's just there. It just isn't time. But we'll get to as many as we can. California says Marx Brothers are the Stooges. The Stooges. That reading guy says, whatever happened to David Murphy? He disappears as his city makes international headlines. Yes, every time his city makes international headlines, he disappears from BookTube. And it appears to do that on a regular basis. But he's still out there crushing his PRs at the gym. Steve Bronstein says, why did Sam Harris seem so much more impressive years ago than the last 5 or 6 years? The podcaster voice was always there. Yeah, I know. The reason that he seems diminished over time is because he is not an elastic thinker. He is not a lively thinker. His knees are not supple. His mental knees are not supple. Think how long you've been listening to me. And now think about the change that you have rightly noticed in Sam Harris from the way he was 10 years ago to the way he is now. Can you imagine that happening to me? So I know I'm not world famous like Sam Harris, but there's a perfect parallel. Ossification happened to him. A very, very paunchy comfort in his own opinions happened to him. A selling out, in other words, a willingness to appear on Joe Rogan, happened to him. Doesn't have to happen. Doesn't happen to everybody. Didn't happen to Carl Sagan. This is not going to happen to me. But yeah, that's the reason, is that you watch him now and you feel like this is a person who has settled into simply being Sam Harris. The dog in the book says, thank you. I actually recently thrifted a copy of The Warden, so that works out. Oh, you'll love it. And of course, there are multiple videos on my channel about The Warden, including a chapter by chapter read along. So let's see here. J. Scott Phillips says, I'm torn between True Grit and The Quiet Man. Two really good ones. Some Okie Dude says True Grit. They're two really good ones. Quiet Man is the True Grit. A lot of it relies on other people. And the actress who plays Maddie is not always good. And Chris Christopherson is not always good in it, in the movie. They're not always good. Whereas in The Quiet Man, everyone is always good all the time. It is an absolutely practiced group of actors. Morgan says, Steve, were you sleeping like this as a baby or as a well, how would I remember? What was your mother's reaction to this phenomenon of humans' physiology? If so, be sainted ma. She's pretty much one reaction to everything. Some Okie Dude says, great dialogue and more approachable, I think. Then again, I haven't read The Quiet Man. You don't have to read The Quiet Man. Manny says, yeah, but what about a second batch of videos about the Lord of the Rings? I know. Well, I'm grateful that you people like them, but I'm covering the same ground only 2 years later. Surely I could find another book, like maybe The Once Future King, or something like that. Danger Kid says, Steve, best books on Chernobyl. I'm currently rewatching the HBO miniseries, and it's making me want to do some deep diving. What's the one that I'm blurbed on? Is it Midnight in Chernobyl? Something like that. I'm blurbed on one of them, on the paperback of one of them. I think by name. I've never seen it. But you always want to go to Steve Blurb. So just go to Google and type in Steve Donahue Chernobyl. Let's see here. Colombian Thunder says, as for TV, I'm watching The Pit. It follows the entire ER shift hour by hour. And it's amazing. I think you would probably enjoy it. I think I have part of it as a screener. This is medical dramas. I didn't do it. I haven't tried it. We Will Refuse says, I second that for a batch of Lord of the Rings videos here. That reading guy says, let's book it. The Praise of Folly chapter by chapter read along starting tomorrow. Well, I could do a Praise of Folly chapter by chapter read aloud. All I would need to do is translate it myself. Then there's no problem with copyright. California says a book on the history, the origins of the Mujahideen and Al Qaeda and their involvement with the CIA. There are lots of books. I'm not that really is reminiscent of you just punching the right buttons on a vending machine. But none come to mind. There is a really good book that Zach at the Brattle recommended to me about Al Qaeda, but I don't remember the author of it. Morgan says, is Viggo Mortensen a great actor, and how good/bad do you think Nick Cage is given his divisiveness? Neither one of them are good actors, but they can be used well. They can choose the right material. Some Okie Dude says, I say Viggo is one of the greatest actors of our time. Well, I may say that someday, but it is not this day. That reading guy says, what other favorite books could you do? Ovid, The Jungle Books, Genji. Oh, sure, they're all a bunch. You can do nonfiction as well. California says, rewatching Band of Brothers for the first time in 10 years. I can't help but love it, even though it's a tad sentimental at some points. What are your thoughts on the series? It's pure brilliance. Purely brilliant. Even the sentimentality. It's just incredible. All of it. It's just amazing. There's sometimes the sentiment is more troweled on than others. The episode where the blind soldier gets his sight back is kind of dumb. The episode, with the red scarf, the minute you see a forlorn possible love interest wearing a red scarf, it's going to be pulled out of rubble at the end of the episode. But most of it, oh my God, Just absolutely incredible. Karen Potter says, if you did a deep dive on every book you love, we would be watching 24/7 and have give up our own reading. It'd be worth it. I am, after all. California says John Wayne's best movie is Rio Bravo. It's the first time I saw John Wayne acting as a more three-dimensional figure than just playing John Wayne. Plus, it has one of the best movie themes. The Shootist has already been mentioned. Some Okie Dude said, didn't Volman do a book on the Mujahideen? Probably. He has probably did a series of 17 volumes, illustrated in etchings done in metal. Gandhi says, have you gotten to the new biography of Tojo? No, I have not. Nope. I feel bad about that. I keep waiting for a galley copy when an e-copy is just fine. Manny says, the pronunciation is something I still struggle with a bit in Chaucer, but my native language is Swedish, and Middle English pronunciation not that much different. The chat jumped. Okay, but we can't stay because we've got to wrap this up. I don't know how it's going to happen. Albert says, do the Patriots really deserve another Super Bowl win? Well, I would assume that this is the first time that they deserve it. Since Bill Belichick isn't involved, I assume they didn't cheat this time around. California says, sorry to make it clear, I meant the history of Japanese American prison camps. Yeah, that's not going to help any. That reading guy says, I searched for your short story starter kit and ironically only found your doorstopper starter kit, but no starter kit dealing with short stories. That can't be true. You're probably just drunk. Morgan says, Steve, have you ever seen this Australian Outback film called Wake in Fright from 1971? It's an absolutely insane experience with a Peter O'Toole lookalike in the lead. I do not know that movie. We Will Rise says, I like the Shootist overall from both Wayne and Ford. I'm going to have to go with The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance for my favorite. Notice all these great movies that we're naming. Tolstoy 111 says, how did I miss this? Yes, well, you did miss it because we have to wrap this up. Gandhi says, I watched a recent talk by Neil Ferguson, was taken aback by his forceful scolding that no one reads anymore. His tone was very scolding. And I don't blame him. I don't like his tone, but We Will Refuse says, I've always found Sam Harris to be insufferable. Yeah, but a lot of people didn't find him to be insufferable in 2015 that now find him to be insufferable. He has definitely changed. That reading guy says, Steve's mental knees are 28 years old. The minute you joke, but Balin says, how to prevent that mental ossification? Terrified of it happening to me. Well, you already know my solution, which is have young friends. Of course, they've abandoned me now. I'm looking around for a good-looking young man now. I'm looking in this chair. They've abandoned me now. I don't have any now. But I guess theoretically they're out there living their own lives. But that's the key, is to have young friends. And to have the kind of young friend who is not sitting at your feet like a disciple. They'll rag you like crazy if you try to lecture them. Most people that I know who are not my age, let's say 20 years younger than me, most people that I know, grown men especially, don't have any friends at all. And if they do, all their friends are their own age. They don't have any young friends because they drive them away like putrid stench. Because the minute they meet someone who's what, 21, 24, all they can talk about is how, when I was your age, there's all this stuff you don't know. Who wants to be friends with someone like that? Let's see here. Some Okie Dude says a lot of the new atheists are. Oh, you were talking to someone else. Okay. Paul Morton says The Warden is a fantastic read. It is. I have plenty of videos, including reading it out loud. A Dog in the Book says, chapter by chapter of The Warden, you say, I shall be sure to check it out. I'm sure it's there. Gandhi says, what are your thoughts on Paul Rosalie? Have you read his recent book on the experiences in the Amazon? I have not. Tolstoy says, the Coen Brothers remake of True Grit was really good. Better than the original. We Will Refuse is responding to Tolstoy 111, so we can just ignore that. Some Okie Dude says Haley Seinfeld was really good as Maddie. Okay, all right, great, you're all in on it then. Siva says, do you think Melania is more victim than or more perp? Well, she's thoroughly evil. The only way that she's a victim is that she actually is the property of Donald Trump. She's not his wife. She is his wife, but he also owns her. Literally, she's his property. She was signed over to him. He bought her. So in that limited sense, she's a victim, but she's still evil, thoroughly evil. That reading guy says, "Oh yes, the Once and Future King chapter by chapter read along, please." Manny says, "I'm long overdue for a Once and Future King reread, so I would be a read along out of that book." That reading guy says, "Gasp! Please translate The Praise of Folly and read it aloud." Oh, you can't decide what you want, can you? Morgan says, "What makes an actor good in your opinion?" Yeah, that's a nice chat question. When I'm trying to get out of the chat, that's just fine. I can answer that easily. It's a whole melange of things, but especially awareness of acting. If awareness of acting will kill it. Uh, that reading guy. Oh, that reading guy is next, but the chat jumped. I assume for the last time. Every booktuber should do a chapter by chapter read along of their favorite books. I agree completely. A chapter by chapter read along of your favorite book, or some sort of project, like what Mike is doing on Riff Raff's Reading Renaissance about Read the Beloved Country. We're not. None of us are new. We're not new to this anymore. It's time we started making this really enjoyable for each other. Why not branch out? I would love if people would do that. At least their favorite books. Um, let's see here. Uh, Ethan Boland says, "Who the heck is this old guy on my screen?" Uh, some Okie dude says, "Steve, Sir Donahue is a strapping young man." Steve is 28 years old. Some Okie dude says, "I don't envy the task of potential William Volman biographer." California says, recommended book on the Tuskegee Airmen. I don't have one. Colombian Thunder says, "How can you praise John Wayne in The Shootist so much when the Conqueror is right there?" I didn't say he never did any wrong. Of course, even dead, he can't live down the Conqueror. Morgan says, "Why do you think Vigo is just okay? I've seen him act in at least 6 languages, including Arabic, and the language is somehow still secondary to his acting. Has a lot of old school gravitas." He has a bit of old school gravitas. He doesn't have a lot of old school gravitas. Come on. Tolstoy says, "Wake and Fright." I'm still laughing over your last comment. What have you got to say now? "Wake and Fright is crazy. Made by the guy who 10 years later would direct First Blood." Okay. Albert. Oh, no. We jumped again. Oh, no. Not far. Albert says, "I hope Tarzan of the April picks up steam." It can't pick up steam. It would be an angry incel event for one. So it couldn't pick up steam. uh, Manny says, "What was that Western series you talked about and love? Something that starts with out, I think." Oh, what are you doing up there? Huh? A Western series that starts with out, I think. Not coming to mind. That reading guy says, "The Steve I know tries to lecture me all the time about dude bro habits like smoking and being pretentious." Morgan says, "Tolstoy 111." Oh, you're responding to someone else. Steve says, "What do you think motivated Tulsi Gabbard to become a Russian agent?" Money. The only thing that motivates anything in the Trump world is worship and fear of Trump and money. Uh, reading guy says, "I know exactly what I want Steve to do a chapter read along of his favorite books, new translations or no." So for my annual read of the Iliad in June, we would read the Iliad translated by me with commentary. Uh, let's see here. Karen says, "More Steve streams, please. Didn't realize how much I have missed them." Yes, we should do more. Morgan says, "Talking about the handsome young guys deserting you, truly an insult." I'm looking around and they're not here. There should be one here at all times. Not at all times. I'm not a prima donna, but I shouldn't go months in between. It's very inconvenient. It's very inconsiderate of them. I'm not going to have another one for God knows how long. Anyway, that reading guy says, "What are you reading tonight?" I am reading this, The Violet Hour by James Cahill, which is fulfilling a new trend that I do not like in new books, where the pub sheet does not mention the pub date. Literally the only detail that anybody wants to know. This is like the third book I've seen in 2026 where that's true. And I'm going to read a chunk of this, the Richard Allington translation of the Decameron, with all these great pictures in it. Allington was so interesting, and I've read this before. I've owned this copy before. But I mainly know him for his rip snorting biography of Lawrence of Arabia, so it'll be a lot of fun. Plus, a romance, and something from the library. Uh, Manny says, "Well, what is your favorite Western theme series then? Maybe that is the one." My favorite Western themed series is Deadwood. David Hume says, "Is Janet McCurdy's half his age any good?" Well, tune into the next Cedarburg Public Library Books of the Week, and you'll find out. Uh, Tolstoy 111 says, "Are you a big fan of the original True Grit? Wayne is doing self-parody." Boy, oh boy. You're just spoiling for a fight, aren't you? Yes, I am a fan of the original True Grit, in which there is not one single picosecond of self-parody. That reading guy says, "A Steve translation of the Iliad would be epic." No pun intended. The dog and book says, "I'd watch the heck out of a Steve translation of the Iliad." Balin says, "Earlier Steve streams too, please." Yes, they should be earlier. They should be around 4, so I get everybody. That reading guy said, "What are you doing back there, baby?" Oh, you are definitely ready to get moving. Okay, well, we'll do that because we've got to wrap this up anyway. Uh, that reading guy says, "Why must the young men who visit you be handsome?" Well, because I've got to have something to look at in case they talk. So it certainly won't be interesting. Balin says, "Real men have beer bellies." Do they indeed? I want to be able to bounce a quarter off it. If they've got abs, sometimes they don't. Hedgehogs don't have abs. Josh says, "I started reading the To the Bright Edge of the World by A. and Ivy and was so excited to see your review included in the front." Is it really? I've never seen a paperback copy of it. I love the book. I'm, boy, that's with a number of mentions of blurbs of mine that are out there in the wild that I've never seen. Uh, We Will Refuse says, "I have to call a night." Yes, so do I. I've loved all your company, but I have to as well. Uh, yes, that is the one I was thinking of. From which year is it? I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, Deadwood. Yes, yes. When was that? The early 2000s. It went on for a couple of seasons, and like everyone who watches Deadwood, at the end of the final episode, you're dying to find out how it ends, and it never does. There was a movie. They eventually, years later, made a movie that was bad. But the series itself was as good as anything that has ever been on TV. Uh, uh, let's see here. That reading guy says, "Young men as not interesting can confirm." Columbia Thunder, "Got to get back to the Pride and Prejudice. Is Mr. Collins the first literary dude, bro?" No. Uh, Griffin says, "The XP feature seems to incentivize chatters to say inane things to you." I don't know what the XP feature is. Dylan says, "Thanks for the stream, Steve. Have a good evening. Bye, all." Everybody's saying bye. Good. We should all shove each other out the door. We'll just stick around forever. This was enormous fun. Enormous fun. It went well, and I had totally forgotten that how much I enjoyed it. This was absolutely wonderful. So we must do this again. I don't know exactly when. Uh, I don't know that tomorrow will work, but I'll try. It really largely depends on what else I get done. Uh, it's not really a question of opening time because I'm sitting here on this fainting couch anyway. It's a question of what else I get done in these blocks of time because I'm not retired. But we'll see. It'll be soon. If it's not tomorrow, it will be soon. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you all very much. This was wonderful. And I'll be back.